If for any reason I start getting feedback again like we did last week, I am just going to mute until I talk.
Okay. I think everything's going to be fine.
I'm trying to prepare for anything.
Anything, huh? Okay. Well, hello everyone. This is Scott Roberts from Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance, and I'm here with Terry Mann from the Astronomical League, and it is the 46th Astronomical League live program. This time with Terry Reinert. And Terry, how's everything at the league?
Everything at the league is doing just fine, thank you. Now, if you could get rid of all these clouds that have been around Ohio, that would be great. But it looks like tonight might actually clear off. Maybe.
Very good. Very good. It's
Yes.
cloudy here in Arkansas right now, so
Well, I
it's the
got your
way it
clear
goes
skies that you
sometimes.
had.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Well, you've got an exciting show tonight. I heard lots of good things about Terry Reinert. Uh, I know
Tom,
he's a board member for the International Dark Sky International. I always go back to the old
I know.
International Dark Sky
Habit.
Association, but
Yeah.
anyways, we all know who we're talking about. It's those guys that protect the dark skies. So, um,
Yes.
and I'll let you take it here from here, Terry. Thank you for
Okay.
coming on.
Thank you so much, Scott. We appreciate everything you do. Well, good evening, everybody. It's finally warming up a little bit. And like Scott said, we have got a fantastic lineup tonight. I can't wait to hear all everybody. I'm looking forward to it. So, without further ado, how about if we go to David Levy? And David, it is so good to see you after last week. We had such problems with internet and everything else that it's so good to be able to talk to everybody again. So, David, how about if I turn this over to you and thank you for being on tonight?
Well, thank you, Terry. And I am very pleased. I had to replace my entire computer system, but it's working and I'm happy. My quotation tonight actually is not astronomical. I discovered this when Wendy and I were in Africa years and years ago to see the 2001 total eclipse of the sun. I think it was June 21st, 2001. It was wonderful. And on the way back at the airport, we're all waiting to go through security, and there's a big line. And as I slowly went up the line, I saw this poster that was absolutely stunning to me. I dropped out of the line and I copied the entire thing down. And these lines are from Henry Beston's book, The Outermost House, published in 1949. Creatures of the wild. We patronize them for their incompleteness, for their tragic fate of having taken form so far below ourselves. And therein we err, and greatly err. For the animals shall not be measured by man. In a world older and more complete than ours, they move finished and complete, gifted with extensions of the senses we have lost or never attained, living by voices we shall never hear. They are not brethren, they are not underlings, they are other nations caught with ourselves in the net of life and time, fellow prisoners of the splendor and travail of the earth. Thank you, Terry, and back to you.
Thank you, David. That is really interesting. Yeah, I think anymore, the animals are part of the family. It seems like I know when I've had dogs, they are just like part of my family, and they're caught up in everything I'm caught up in. So that's really that makes you think.
I can
So
really appreciate that. And actually often thought of having a pet lion or a pet polar bear or something else. And visiting Dean Koenig a few months ago, and I told him that I bumped into a polar bear on the interstate. And I stopped the car, and he dropped into the car. We had a little conversation, and Dean right away just went right with me. He said, "Well, where's the bear now?" I said, "He's in the car waiting." And so that was fun. And back to you, Terry. Thanks.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for being here. Well, I
Thank
also
you.
have the pleasure tonight of having John Goss here. You've heard me talk many times before. He does our graphics, and I wish I had half of the experience that you have doing that. I turn to him every time I need something done. I say, "Hey, John, can you do this whenever you've got time?" And he always fits it into that schedule, which is greatly appreciated because John is a volunteer of the league too, and we do depend on each other an awful lot. So, John, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All righty. Thank you, Terry. That was some nice words there. As I was telling the people on this program just before we began, about 10 minutes ago, I decided to change my talk, but not completely. I'm going to start out a little differently. And I'm going to start out by telling you something, or asking you something, really. What is next Friday? We have, what's that, February 14th? Does that ring a bell on somebody? Well, of course, I'm setting you up for something here just by asking you this. But I'm gonna share something with you. I hope. There we go. Next Friday. That's the 35th anniversary of one of the most important astro images ever captured. And no, it has nothing to do with the Space Telescope. Any ideas? You've all seen it. You've all seen it. And I'll show you the picture here. But it's something that I think is very important, especially right now, for us to consider. So here we go.
Pale blue dot? Yes.
You betcha. Pale blue dot. It's not much of a picture, but that's why it's a great picture, because it kind of shows you or evokes some strange feelings in you. And I'd like to read something. Of course, you all know about Carl Sagan, and he wrote the book Pale Blue Dot. And there's a great quote in there. I'm not going to read the whole quote because it's I don't know, it's about a page and a half long, and I don't have that much time. But as I said, in these days and times, this really applies. It really applies to our situation. So please let me proceed and bear with me. This is why I say I changed this 10 minutes ago, so I'm kind of going with this. From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest, but for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you have ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. I want to stop there because I said it goes on for another half page, page and a half or so. And I don't want to take up too much time. But I think this is a really good thing to think about next Friday, because it will be 35 years since that picture was taken by the Voyager 1 craft. As you see there, 3.8 billion miles from our pale blue world. I'll skip over this. It's pretty much what I had just read. Before I start in my main talk, I want to talk a little bit about some of our awards that the Astronomical League offers, especially the youth awards. Too much here to go through it all, but all this stuff is on our website. So if you want to find out more about the youth awards, go there. But I do want to point out one thing on here, the purpose of these awards. You would think that we're doing all this so we can get young people to become professional astronomers, but that's not the case. It's much bigger than that. As you can see, what I have is to open young minds to examine where their futures may lead. Is to open young hearts to a lifelong love of the night sky. And it's to let young people know that others think that their avocation is very worthy indeed. So it's a good thing to have these awards to drive this home to the kids. But I'll say one more thing, which I can never say enough of. These kids out there, they don't nominate themselves. And if some adult does not step in and nominate them, it could be a club officer, it could be a club member. If no one steps up to nominate them, then they won't be nominated. And sorry to say, a lot of these awards will just go away. No one will be awarded. So you got to be nominated, and the kids aren't going to do so themselves. One more thing. This is a quick notice. I talked about it last time briefly. As you hopefully you all know about the Library Telescope Program, which I'm not going to describe here, but we give away up to 11 telescopes to clubs who enter the drawing. We have a problem this year in that our telescope of choice, the 4.5-inch Orion Star Blast, is no longer being manufactured. We haven't found a substitute yet, but we're working on it, and we do have some good leads. But that's something to think about. So please go to the website, and if your club wants to enter in this, go ahead. We'll see if we can find some telescopes to give away. Okay, now on to the good thing. Volunteerism. I spoke about this last year, and I'd like to kind of pick up where I left off. And don't worry, you aren't going to be left behind. One thing I covered pretty thoroughly is this old saying, never volunteer for anything. And we have talked about it, and we've come to the conclusion that this simply isn't true. Because this model does not work for hobby clubs such as your astronomy club. It does not work for the Astronomical League. Because, if volunteers are given tasks that they hate, that they don't want to do, well, they're not going to do them. So nothing gets done without volunteers, and they have to do the task. So whatever's done has to be enjoyable for them to do. I talk about volunteers. Well, why does the league need volunteers? And think about your own club in this same perspective as well. Why do we all need volunteers? Of course, I'll be speaking about the league since that's what I know about. Well, we need them to help accomplish our mission. You can see here there are three different things: astronomy education, observation, and communication among astronomical societies. We have to have volunteers to accomplish that. And the way we do it is we have a whole bunch of benefits and offerings. And I'll say that if you're a league member, if your club does not take advantage of any of this stuff, well, it's out there. That's why we're here. That's why we have, as you can see, Reflector Magazine. You're on AL Live right now. Our observing programs, our awards programs, are the Webmaster Award, the Williamina Fleming Award, the Astronomy Day Awards, and so on. We have a lot of stuff out there. Now, I'm not going to go through them all. I'm going to look at this a little differently. Hopefully, we're all aware of what the league does. But let's say we live in a world in which there is no Astronomical League. How would amateur astronomy be? What would amateur astronomy how would it look like? Well, you're aware of the league's observing programs. The AL ceased to exist. It's my hypothetical guess and what it would be like. but you find people standing at their telescopes wondering what they should attempt to find with no clear goals in mind. They have little direction and they have little encouragement in developing their abilities to explore the heavens. And as a result, little is what they find and little is what they experience. So the Astronomical League wants you to get out and observe and wants to help you to do so. That's why it has a lot of these programs. If the AL ceased to exist, well, the Reflector magazine would not exist. The website would not exist. The Facebook and YouTube sites would not exist. There would be no easy connection between all the clubs. We have about 300 clubs comprising about 25,000 individuals across the country and really around the world too. All that would not be there. So think about how important vital communication is between the clubs and amateur astronomers. The Astronomical League helps accomplish that. Wouldn't be there without the league. Of course, we got all these awards I'm just talking about. So where would all these people be without the awards programs to point out the contributions they make to amateur astronomy? Well, as you can see, the hard work of webmasters and newsletter editors would be gone, unsung, in the background, forgotten about. And amateur astronomers who make the lasting contributions would never be recognized. So that's another thing that the league does all that stuff for you. Now about public outreach, trying to get the public interested. If the league had never existed, we'd have, what do I have here? Enthusiastic, well, you can read this as well as I can, but a youth across the country would not be welcomed into clubs, would not be around people who would have the same interests, and they may dwindle in their own interest in the hobby. Issue. With Tom here tonight, I'm sure he's going, yeah. But with dark sky stuff, if the AL wasn't here, remember that dark pollution was the accepted term before light pollution came into popular use in the early 70s, I believe. Well, a lot of these issues would just not be addressed, would not be put in front of people for them to recognize that there really is a problem. And let me say about, I'll give one plug on battling light pollution. If every amateur astronomer spoke up about sky glow, there wouldn't be a problem if everyone did it. But it's just, unfortunately, just a few people are speaking up, here, there, but so many people aren't. So keep that in mind. Alcon. We really didn't talk much about Alcon tonight, but that's coming up in the next 5 months, almost 4 months, and it'll be in Bryce Canyon. It'll be a great event. Of course, Bryce Canyon is known for its dark sky observing, but the convention itself will have a lot of workshops presented, a lot of vendors that you can visit, a lot of people there that you can swap stories with, learn from each other. It's a big deal. So if the Astronomical League ceases to exist, these national events or regional events would be much less likely to happen. Okay. I think what the real thing the league does is it gives us all a sense of national community in amateur astronomy. And if the league wasn't there, we're not really a cohesive unit right now, but we would be certainly much less of one if the league would not be there. There wouldn't be a national voice for amateur astronomy for all the issues affecting our hobby. So think about that. That is the reasons why volunteerism is so important for the league. In short, no other respected national organization exists that strives to attain all the goals of the Astronomical League. But think of all the volunteers, why we need so many. Our officers, Terry's vice president, she's a volunteer. All the other officers, they're all volunteers. But there's only 5 of those, and then another 20 or so spread around the country in part of our regions. But look at what we have. We have about 40 observing program administrators, plus their backups. A dozen judges or so for the all the award stuff. Gotta have those people. The reflector staff, 5 or 7. I think there's about 7 people on that. Of course, the Alcon organizers, it doesn't get done by itself. Astronomy Day, got the trust fund trustees, the web team, publications chair, on and on and on. Plus, each club of our 300 clubs has what we call an Alcor, which is a person who interacts with the Astronomical League, passing information back and forth. We got to have all these people who are all volunteers. We got to have them on board and doing the things that need to be done. Because without their dedicated work, none of this would happen, and the league's operation would come to a grinding halt awfully fast. So that is why we need volunteers. Next time, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but this is where we're going to end for right now. So thank you all for putting up with my talk. And please, next Friday, try to remember what day it is. It's the Blue Dot Day. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, John. You know, it's hard to believe it's been 35 years. I remember the first time I saw that picture and it just blew me away. I mean, to see us.
And February 14th, that seems like a pretty good day for it.
I know. Yeah. I'm sure they did that on purpose.
Somebody had something to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, John, I am going to follow up with a few things of my own since Chuck Allen isn't here. I am going to touch on awards, and I'm definitely touching on Bryce Canyon. So I'm going to share my screen. So, John, even though I'll try not to talk about the same things here. Oh, maybe I shut mine down. Let's see where I'm at. Oh, okay, I did. And we'll just a minute. I'm sorry. I thought I was ready and I'm not. But anyway, a lot of what you spoke about, we have got so many great volunteers that do so many things to help keep everything on track that
okay, I'd like to add one more thing. One thing
right
I did not say. I'd like to thank Scott Roberts. You know,
Yeah.
he's a volunteer, and you see the results of his efforts, which hopefully are going to be good results here in a moment. But you see the results of the efforts.
I do it for selfish reasons. I really enjoy it. So
okay, well that's one of the keys, though.
That's the one.
You know, if your volunteers do not like what they're doing, they aren't going to be volunteering for very long.
It's not a drudgery. It feels like a privilege, and it is a privilege, but it feels good. So
well, Scott and Explore Scientific put a lot of effort into the league. They sponsor a lot of our programs, a lot of our awards. So because of people like them
not
and
near
others,
the effort and energy that the league puts into the community. I mean, it is. You know, you guys have been doing it for over 75 years. You know, and if you look at the people that have been involved, I mean, it's a who's who of astronomy. You know, so it's a great organization to be a part of. You know, and if you're really wanting to not only make new friends, but become deeply involved in what this community is all about, you probably would be hard pressed to find any other organization except for the league that could offer all of that. So that's for sure. Not to diminish other great organizations, they're out there.
Right, definitely. Right? Yep.
We love them too.
Yes, we are friends with all of them.
Yes.
So, all right, what I wanted to touch on, and thank you everybody for your patience, is Alcon, because I do have some updates. It is June 25th through the 28th this year. We only have about 100 to 150 spots left. And that we have got well over close to 300, I believe, right now. So think about this as it gets closer, because the rooms will be released in April. If you do not have reservations, you will lose the room rate, plus the fact that we don't have a tremendous amount of rooms left, especially at the beginning. So please, if you are thinking you're coming to Alcon, really make a decision soon. We're going to have great weather, highs typically in the 70s and 80s, and lows can be down in the 40s. The last time we were there, it was amazing to walk outside of Ruby's Inn. We're right at the entrance to the park. The visitor center's like 5 miles down the road. It was just beautiful. Everything during the day. And remember, if you bring the family, Ruby's Inn has got the bus that takes you through the park. So you can ride the bus to go to different places and you can see the park while everybody else is sitting in talks and enjoying that. And also camping is available. I believe there are camping rates too. But please, if you're going to go to Alcon at Bryce Canyon, try to make a decision as soon as possible. Rooms will be released, I believe it's mid-April. Also, on March 7th, a month from now, we're going to have Bob King back. And we don't have a title exactly yet, but we know he's going to be here. So we wanted to give you a heads up on March 7th at 7 p.m. We will be back with Bob King. And as I'm going to let you guys read this because this is a bunch of information. We do have the awards deadline for nominating or submissions. The deadline is March 31st. Library Telescope, if I remember right, is it in May, John? Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's May 31st.
That's what you were later than that. Okay. So the Library Telescope is later, but for all of the awards, it is March 31st. And everything above this dotted line is all youth awards. And they are pretty incredible. And I tell you, I have met some kids that are just unbelievable to talk to. I wish at their age, I would have had that drive or that focus to do the things they do. All of them have, their entries have been amazing. The people, the parents, everybody has just been amazing with the youth awards. We meet a lot of them. Below that line is the awards that can go to different clubs. Club members, whether they are nominated or like the Sketching Award or the Wilhelmina Fleming Award, you just, submit your own stuff, but you can be nominated for Leslie C. Peltier Award, Mabel Stearns, which is for a newsletter for the club, and Webmasters, kind of self-explanatory. And then the other two, you just send in your submissions. So there is a lot going on, a lot of awards, and all of these, if you're at Bryce Canyon, that's where they will be presented at Bryce Canyon. So the website is at the bottom. We've ran a lot of information by you, but the website page down here at the bottom will take you to the page that goes in. And you have to be a member for a lot of these. The reflector, I believe it's the December reflector. Yeah, December reflector. We have the call for award submission on page 21. And look at that. That gives very, very detailed information. Doesn't work very well. Anyway, it gives detailed information about the awards. So please take a look at that. The end of March, it's all going to end and judging will take place and the awards will either be mailed to you or if you're at Bryce Canyon, we will present them at Bryce Canyon and we hope to see you there. So I think that is all I have. So it's kind of an update. Chuck Allen's not here tonight. He had a previous commitment. So that's pretty much, we've got a lot of other things going on with the league, but that's what I want to cover tonight. So with that, Scott, you look like you want to say something. Or are you just being
I'm just
listening?
hanging in there and staying in awe of your awesomeness, Terry. So
Oh dear. Yeah, look at everybody going.
anyways, no, I'm
Thank you, Scott.
I'm just very happy that we got such a great speaker coming up, and I was reading through his bio, which I just posted up on Explore Scientific. So if you go to explorescientific.com /46ALL, you can learn more about our speaker and the rest of the speakers that came on tonight. But I'll let you turn it over to Tom.
Okay.
Wait a minute, just a minute. I'm going to introduce Tom. I have his introduction too. So yeah, Scott, you go right ahead. But you check out where Scott said too, and I am going to read you the bio I have because Tom has done so much to help with light pollution. and just an amazing, amazing guy. So let me tell you a little bit about Tom. Tom is a retired Washington, D.C. lawyer who has spent most of his career representing airlines and railroads in labor and employment matters, including extensive experience translating scientific experts' paper for lay decision makers. He has performed pro bono work as an environmental activist in both light and water pollution. He is a graduate of Harvard College and of Harvard Law School. Tom is a member of both Northern Virginia Astronomy Club and the Tucson Amateur Astronomy Association, which he does outreach for. In 2013, seeing Andromeda Galaxy for the first time with his naked eyes from atop Kitt Peak rekindled an interest in astronomy and a desire to eliminate light pollution. He currently lives in Fairfax, Virginia, and a winter home in the desert outside Tucson, with border forest skies and a view of Kitt Peak. Oh, that sounds great. For a decade, he has assisted Dark Sky as a volunteer on legal and public policy issues at a national level. He has been a member of the board of directors of Dark Sky International for 4 years and is the immediate past president of the board for 2022 and 2024. Tom, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Terry. Let me see if my technical expertise extends to pulling up my PowerPoint presentation. And how does that look? Yep. There we are. That working?
Looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you to Terry. Thank you to the Astronomical League. John Goss and Don Knapp heard this presentation at StarQuest at Green Bank, which is a great star party, which I encourage you all to attend last year, and encouraged me to do this for the Astronomical League, and I'm very pleased to do it. Thank you to the Astronomical League. Thank you to Scott and Explore Scientific for sponsoring this. This is going to be a different presentation than most things astronomical, but perhaps it'll widen some of your horizons. One of my favorite experiences in life is observing a night sky, a good night sky with a naked eye, going someplace very dark, setting up a zero gravity chair, sitting back, letting my eyes dark adapt, and then just observing the stars in the night sky. It is a common experience that goes across time for many human beings. It is inspirational, awe-inspiring, and I'll talk about awe later. But the reality is that our vision, our human vision, actually is not very well adapted to looking at the night sky. We are confused, we suffer some illusions, and we form some misapprehensions. And I'm going to talk about those somewhat systematically. And I'm going to be talking about the history of astronomy, because the history of astronomy is largely one of overcoming the limitations of our own human perceptions and then forming a better idea of the universe. So we amateur astronomers love equipment. We love to buy equipment. We love to sell equipment. We love to go on cloudy nights and argue about equipment. Scott Roberts loves this because he sells us the equipment, right? But in all this obsession with equipment, which is excessive at times, we neglect our most basic equipment, which is our eyes, our optic nerves, and the portions of the brain that process visual information. And we do that at our peril because our human vision has certain limitations, and if we don't understand those, we can get in trouble. Case in point, Percival Lowell, the brilliant and eccentric late 19th century, early 20th century astronomer, He built the Lowell Observatory outside Flagstaff, commissioned a 24-inch refractor, Clark refractor, which was state-of-the-art instrument. And he was very obsessive about looking at Mars and sketching his views of the surface of Mars, which most of us are familiar with, Lowell's view of the canals on Mars. What most of us are not aware of is he also plotted the surface of Venus. And the picture on the right is his drawing of Venus. Now, anyone who's ever looked through a telescope at Venus knows there's no detail to be seen there. It is a white disk or a crescent disk at different times. So what was going on with old Percival? Well, he took that 24-inch Clark telescope and he stopped it down to about 4 inches, with the result that he was shining a very bright light in his eye and making the world's largest ophthalmoscope. He was looking at the veins in his retina and he sketched them, and he did a really good job. He was a good observer, look how that detail on the retina. He didn't realize the limitations of human vision and what would happen if he used his instrument in a somewhat unorthodox way. So I'm going to be talking about misperceptions and illusions, and there were technical differences between illusions and misperceptions, and it really goes into when in the visual process of gathering light, processing your brain gets fooled. But your brain does get fooled at different levels. It could be the inferences drawn from what we're seeing. It could be just not properly seeing the visual stimuli. All those occur. But I'm going to paint with a somewhat broad brush on that terminology. You heard about my background. I'm a past president of Dark Sky International. Dark Sky International prides itself on attempting to preserve the experience that I explained a few minutes ago, sitting and looking in a dark place at the night sky, which is a valuable part of our heritage. And I have been a serious amateur for about a decade. But my professional training is as a lawyer, and actually before law, I was deep into psychology. And along the way, I actually learned some Eastern meditation. All disciplines that have deep skepticism about human perception. So part of my DNA is I am very skeptical about human perceptions. And from a lawyer's perspective, if you ask a lawyer what the least reliable evidence there is, and they will tell you eyewitness testimony, because people perceive things improperly. And by the way, this photo is an illusion. I was not at Stonehenge. Those are styrofoam blocks in Northern Virginia where there's a mock Stonehenge. And so don't believe what you see in the picture. So the first question we should ask is, why do we see? And most of us have never thought about that. We see because the ability to gather information from a distance is an extraordinarily valuable evolutionary adaptation. An organism that can do that can find food, can avoid predators who want to make it food, can help find a mate, can identify competitors. So it's very good success for long-term reproductive success of the organism. Our human eye is a vertebrate eye. We share that with fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. All have the basic structure of the same vertebrate eye. And actually, vision is so powerful is that it has evolved in separate lineages of animals over time. There are 4 different lineages within the mollusks, of which the most important one is the cephalopod eye at the bottom. You can see the insect eye in the upper right, and there's our vertebrate eye. Now, if you look at those cephalopod eye and the vertebrate eye, they're extraordinarily similar, given that they evolved separately. And cephalopods are squids and octopi, and the vertebrate eye developed in fish. So what do we know about fish and cephalopods? Well, they live underwater, and they were using eyes to see limited light that comes through the water reflected from the sun. That also means the development of their eyes had nothing to do with looking at the night sky. And that's one big principle you have to get at the outset. Our eyes were not designed to look at the night sky. Well, what do we see? Our visual instruments have certain ranges. We can see little teeny things down about a millimeter. It's good to see a grain of food, a splinter in your finger, a bug in your food. Very adaptive, right? And you can see things maybe 100 yards away. You can see a predator or prey pretty well, which also is good for success. We actually see best in the middle range, maybe a couple of meters, meter, 2, 3, which are the areas of social interaction. Many of us wear glasses. I and an older guy have progressives, so I use these to see at both ends of the spectrum, up close and far away. Actually, very few people need glasses to see in the medium range. It's the most important social interaction range, and most people can socially interact with a mate or a child, go on a date, have a good meal without their glasses, because that's really why we have eyesight. We are diurnal creatures. We see reflected sunlight, objects through reflected sunlight. Our night vision is limited, and we can see well enough in a full moon in a dark location. But we really are not very good at seeing points of light. You can't look at the sun without damaging your eye. And if you're out at night using your night vision on a full moon night, if you look up at the moon, you're going to lose your night vision. We know in the light pollution world that glare is a very bad thing for human vision. And that's because we're designed to see reflective light. You've probably all seen this picture in a high school or middle school textbook analogizing the human eye to a camera. And you know how old it is because look at the type of camera it has, one of those old accordion cameras. Well, this is not a really good analogy. And we have some similarities. We do have a pupil, we do have a lens, and we do have an area where light is focused. But the problem with this picture is it suggests, apples are red, and this image of a red apple gets projected on our eye, and that's it. But that's not really how our vision works. A better analogy would be 2 video cameras hooked up to a supercomputer, because most of our vision is a brain phenomenon. We form a view of the universe based upon our vision in our immediate world and beyond, based upon a great deal of processing of information by our brain. The optic nerve is closely connected to the brain. It is a very large nerve, and it's bringing a lot of information into the brain that's being processed to give our view of the world. But it's prone to mistakes. And I'm just going to illustrate a few optical illusions to marinate you a little bit on how we make mistakes. This is the cafe wall illusion. The gray lines are all parallel and straight. The reason they don't look that way is because our brain has trouble processing the contrast, multiple contrasts in a single field of view. It gets a little confused and the lines will look non-parallel and even curved. This one is the peripheral drift illusion. The problem here is each one of these little circles is different, and as your brain's trying to process it, it's having trouble with the time delay, and that's creating an illusion of motion. This is not the latest telescope that's being developed. This is the Ebbinghaus illusion. The 2 orange circles are exactly the same in size and color. The one with the smaller circles around it tends to look larger because we're judging size according to contrast with other objects. And that brings us to the moon illusion, which is not one of my 10 illusions, but is an astronomical illusion. The moon looks larger when it's near the horizon than when it's at the zenith. And some people say, oh, well, that's refraction in the atmosphere. No, it is a brain phenomenon. We judge things on the horizon as more important, and therefore they're larger, because something on the horizon could be, again, predator or prey, and our brain emphasizes them. So that's a very simple illusion in the astronomical context. But let me change now and transition to my 10 illusions. And we're going to start first with the illusion of flatness. And there's an illustration for those flat Earth people that'll make them happy. We actually perceive the sky, the night sky, as two-dimensional, basically an inverted bowl with a surface of lights on it. And question is, why is that the way we perceive the night sky? We perceive the night sky that way because we have no available visual cues to see the night sky in 3 dimensions. Parallax doesn't work. The difference between our 2 eyes when we open one and close the other, that doesn't work with the distance of the stars. We don't have other cues like shading and color that are necessary for human depth perception. This is the reason sky charts in 2 dimensions work. Whether it's paper or it's on a screen, we're depicting the 3 dimensions of space in 2 dimensions, and for all reasonable uses, that's an effective illusion. That's the reason planetarium work. Planetaria are illusions of an illusion. It is you have a dome and you project images of stars on it, and it looks like the dome we think we see in the night sky. This illusion has been around forever. That's an illustration of the ancient Egyptian goddess Nut, who was the mother night goddess, and her body hovered over the earth, and the stars were on her torso and in the sky around her. So this illusion is basically since the earliest ages of man. That's the way we view the night sky. The second illusion is the illusion of closeness. We have terminology. We talk about touch the stars, reach the stars, catch the stars. We know in certain settings, the stars will appear to you to be very close. It's the same reason why we see 2 dimensions. It's a lack of visual cues for judging distance. The picture on the left is just an illustration of sort of the touch the star concept. The one on the right is a medieval depiction of the ancient astronomer Ptolemy. He's in the middle of the stars. The center is really how you get the illusion. If you want this illusion, the thing to do is go to a dark sky location and lie on the ground on a sleeping bag or a blanket or a lounge chair. Make sure you don't have any peripheral distractions. Let your eyes dark adapt. And after a while, you will really have trouble telling how close the stars. You may feel like you're in the stars, and you don't even have to buy a teleview eyepiece to get that spacewalk illusion. You will have it for free just lying on the ground. Well, how did we overcome that illusion? It's through parallax. And parallax has been known by astronomers for a long time. Tycho Brahe actually looked at parallax when he looked at comets. He measured parallax with comets. He tried to measure parallax with a supernova and came to the conclusion supernovas were very far away. That's where stars, where comets were in our solar system. But the first one to do it with a star was Friedrich Bessel, who about 1830 did an analysis of the star 61 Cygni. And he made an assessment that it was about 11.4 light years away. The way you did this, you have to measure the angle of the star from opposite ends of Earth's orbit. So you have a 2 astronomical unit distance at the base, and then you're measuring angle. But he was measuring like 200 thousandths of a degree. His calculation was equivalent to viewing a pizza pie in New York City from San Francisco. Very fine distinctions for which he needed good equipment. But it was the beginning of some parallax analysis, which gave us the ability to judge the distance of the stars. The third illusion is the illusion of smallness. We've all heard twinkle, twinkle, little star when we were kids. We humans perceive the stars as small and dim. Why is that? And I'll get to dim in a minute. Small because they're small projected image on our retina. We think things that are important should be big, things that are small are less important. The most analogous thing we can see in our local world is something like fireflies and fire embers. So the illusion here is we're confusing apparent size on our retina with actual size. And obviously the stars are huge. The volume of the sun is like 1.3 million times the volume of the Earth, and the sun is a medium-sized star. There are many stars that are much larger. So we look at these little specks of light in the sky and we think they're small, but we now know the reality is they're much larger. Well, how did we develop that? This is the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, which plots the color sequence and size of stars. It should be called the Cannon-Hertzsprung-Russell diagram because one of the Harvard calculators, Amy Jump Cannon, really came up with the initial scheme. But it was through spectroscopic evidence and brightness, through photographic analysis, that really astronomers developed this model that stars were not only huge, they had a variety of sizes, color intensity, and temperature. The illusion of dimness. Well, dimness is close to smallness. We perceive the stars as dimly lit, but objectively, the stars are dimly lit. There's a great little article, which was in Earth Sky News a number of years ago, and the author, Larry Sessions, noted that Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, is as bright as a 100-watt light bulb seen from 5 miles away. And if you aggregated all the stars you could see in the night sky, you might see thousands of them, maybe 8,000, they're about as bright as the planet Venus. So the stars really are objectively dim, and that's one of the reasons why light pollution is such a problem for astronomers, because it doesn't take much light to obscure the night sky and the stars. So if the stars are objectively dim, then what's the illusion? Well, the illusion is in the inference we draw from the dimness. From the dimness, we again think small size, insignificance, and an actual brightness that matches the apparent brightness. We know, in fact, stars are usually bright. They're thermonuclear furnaces. Our closest star, the sun at 93 million miles, we can't look at without burning out our retinas. So the reality is that stars are very bright, but we do not perceive them, at least with our naked eye. Now, it's really difficult to depict dimness on a slide, but this is someone named Wiley Overstreet, who's a filmmaker, decided he wanted to do a reconstruction of the solar system. So he went out in the desert in Nevada and had his buddies hold stanchions with 100-watt light bulbs on them to show each of the planets and do time-lapse photography. So this gives you an idea of what a 100-watt light bulb looks at, like about 5 miles away, which is as bright as the planet, the star Sirius. Okay, the next one is really important. This is the illusion of crowdedness. We perceive the night sky as crowded with stars, particularly the band of the Milky Way. But the reality is space is mostly space. The astronomer and writer Chet Ramo, who taught college, in his first year class, used to take a 10-pound bag of salt, spread it on the auditorium floor and say, well, this is to recreate the Milky Way. He says, except to do it in scale, I would need 10,000 bags of salt, and I would have to spread them over the circumference of the Earth. Space is mostly space. The average star in the Milky Way is about 5 light years apart from the next star. That's about 30 trillion miles. There are vast distances between the stars. So Enrique Fermi comes along, looks up and says, where is everybody? I think that question, which led to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, is a direct result of this illusion. And just to think as a thought experiment, if we lived in an area of the Milky Way that had a lot of dust and the only star we could see was Sirius, no one would be saying, where is everybody? They'd be saying, why doesn't this star move like the other ones, which would be the planets? So this illusion of space being crowded is what gives us Star Wars and Star Trek. You have to travel between stars and planets in either a 1-hour episode or a 3-hour movie, and we can go faster than the speed of light and do it. It vastly underestimates the distances between stars and between planets. Drake developed his equation to attempt to address this issue of extraterrestrial life. And I think when you look at the Drake equation and Fermi question, you can't overthink this. The real key factor in the Drake equation was the last one, which was how long the civilization's been around. If you've had a couple of thousand years of civilization in 4 or 5 billion years on a star, and stars are 30 trillion miles apart, it's really not surprising that you haven't found anyone else to talk to yet. This guy in the lower right is Heinrich Obler, and Obler developed his paradox, which was, why isn't the night sky just bright? Why isn't it just white with light? Because there are so many stars out there, and their light comes to us. And the answer to Obler's paradox is actually it's because the universe is expanding. Most starlight hasn't gotten to us yet. But again, if we did look out in the night sky and saw white, no one would be saying, where is everybody? So the next illusion is the illusion of firmness. If you go back to the Middle Ages, before the scientific revolution, people looked at the night sky. First, they saw the night sky rotated, which was, of course, an illusion because it's the Earth that's moving. But they perceived the background stars that form the constellation as the firmament. This crystal structure out there that's the basis behind everything else, the planets, the sun, the moon. They viewed the meteors and comets as a weather phenomenon. But there was a view that there was no change in the basic structure of the universe, and it was permanent. Now think about that. The universe is in constant motion. Problem is, we're not around that long to see it. We're very short-lived creatures, even with our civilization. So we underestimate the amount of movement that is there in the universe when we look with our naked eyes. Well, along came Galileo, started looking with the telescope, and he said, oh, gee, the moon has craters, there must have been impacts, Jupiter has moons that go around. It's really very different. And the picture from the Starry Messenger with the Pleiades, there are many more stars. He got in trouble with the Vatican, both because of his message and the way he delivered it. And he was challenging an existing perception of the universe. Vatican has made peace with astronomy. I'm sitting here in Tucson. The Vatican has its observatory at Mount Graham, not far from here. But that view of the universe, of the firmament, has gone away. Next important one is the illusion of currentness. We look at the night sky and think we're gathering current information. Well, why is that? Well, light moves at 186,000 miles per second. Everything we perceive on the Earth is instantaneous movement of light from source to our eyes. We can only see, 26 miles at sea level. You're up in a mountain, you may see 100 miles. Doesn't matter. At 186,000 miles per second, everything's going to seem instantaneous. So our view, whenever we're gathering any sort of visual information, we think it's current information. When in reality, astronomy has a lot more to do with archaeology. You're looking at old information and trying to understand how things have developed over time. So where did our view of light having a speed come from? This is Ole Romer, a Danish astronomer, not that well known. About 1700, he was doing his work. And he really became interested in the Galilean moons. And he was plotting the occultations, eclipses of these moons and developing a schedule of their orbits and when these would occur. And it happened he was doing that when Jupiter and the Earth were in fairly close proximity. And then Jupiter and the Earth started to move apart, and then his schedule didn't work. And he noticed things were not occurring as scheduled, but were taking too long. And he was smart enough to figure out, oh, that must be because it's taking time for the light to get from Jupiter to his eyes on Earth. And he had a preliminary view of the speed of light, which was at least incorrect in the order of magnitude. So we have learned that our information from the night sky, in fact, is not current. Okay, the illusion of completeness, and this goes to our perception system. We have a picture there of the 5 senses. There are actually 6 senses because you have a kinesthetic sense of your internal body. But our visual perception really defines our view of what reality looks like in the world. The Impressionists came along and they started really going from realistic painting to trying to take out detail, play with color, and we're realizing that human perception is flawed and can be manipulated, and that was really what the Impressionism really was about. But the real important scientific story is when you look at the electromagnetic spectrum. We only see visible light. Visible light is what gets through our atmosphere, and therefore we evolved to see the electromagnetic energy that gets through our atmosphere. Much of the electromagnetic spectrum does not get through. And what the history of astronomy, and indeed the very recent history of astronomy, has been to send up satellites and look at other portions of the spectrum, Webb and Spitzer on the infrared, Hopkins on the ultraviolet, Fermi on gamma ray, Chandra on X-ray. We've really expanded what we can gather information about well beyond what our eyes can see on the surface of the Earth. And this has really made a major revolution in our degree of scientific knowledge and is one of the major accomplishments of astronomy. We can't see dark matter if it exists. Maybe it does exist. Maybe sometimes we'll figure out how to see it, but we haven't gotten there yet. Now, this fellow on the left, many of you might have recognized. If you grew up in the 60s, you might. That's Timothy Leary, the guru of LSD and psychedelics. And many people know that Timothy Leary was actually a full professor in the psychology department at Harvard and a very respected researcher and social scientist who's done serious research for many years. But he became interested in psychedelics because he knew they altered human perception. And he was of the view that altering human perception actually has benefits for personality. He was actually researching the impact of LSD on things like depression, of changing consciousness of perception, and then impact on depression. That research was concluded by law for 50 years. It came back within the last 10 years, and it's actually proving to be very promising. But the thought that altered perceptions changes your consciousness is just a little thought I want to bookmark at this point, and we will come back to that later. Okay. The illusion of composition, this really is almost geographical. We look at the night sky and we think it's the window on the universe. We're looking out at our universe. We're not looking out on our universe. We're looking out on our neighborhood in the Milky Way. The stars we are seeing are all in the vicinity of the Orion Spur and the Milky Way. And we can see a few galaxies through the spaces between, but we're thinking what we see is the universe, and that's not true. The fallacy of composition is one illustrated by the Eastern parable of the blind man and the elephant. You know, the blind man is looking at an elephant trunk and he thinks that's the way the entire creature is designed. We do the same thing with just viewing the night sky. We think everything's going to be the way we see it in our vicinity. This is the most famous New Yorker cartoon of all time cover, and it's called New Yorker's View of the World. It's close to my heart because in March 29th, 1976, I was living in New York City between 8th and 9th Avenue in an apartment house that looked just like that. But the joke is that New Yorkers' view of the world is very parochial. It's just their neighborhood and everything else is vague. Well, that is in fact true of all human beings all over the planet. We all have a mental map of our house, our neighborhood, maybe where we go buy groceries, school, work, and then things get vaguer as we go out in concentric circles where we might have traveled. It's just we have a visual map in our brains based upon our experience, not on the reality that's out there in the entire world. And the same is true on our view of the Milky Way. That's Jan Oort. He's a radio astronomer, one of the first radio astronomers who really plotted the structure of the Milky Way through radio astronomy, from which the Oort cloud was named after him, which is pretty cool. But of course, when the journalists had to take a picture, they couldn't put them in front of a radio telescope, so they put them in front of an optical telescope, which is, I guess, another form of illusion. My 10th and last illusion is called the semi-illusion of pattern. The reason I call it a semi-illusion is because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We are pattern recognizing creatures, and we recognize patterns when they are present and when they are not present. It's called a false positives. It's actually a phenomenon called pareidolia, our human knack for visualizing patterns where the data is in fact random. So you have things like the Rorschach test, which shows ambiguous ink patterns to people to get their response. Some people see a wizard opening his cloak, and some see dancing witches, some see a wolf face. Ambiguous patterns get ascribed meaning. And of course, we do that in the night sky. I love the photo on the right, which has constellations, because the constellations are wrong. Cancer is not below Scorpio the last time I checked, but it really illustrates, we look at this random information and we try to form patterns. The picture on the left illustrates a Navajo legend, which I really love. Navajo legend is that one of the gods or goddesses had been assigned the task of putting the stars in the sky, and they were forming the constellations. And Coyote, who's a trickster, came along, took the urn of stars and just threw them randomly in the night sky. So the Navajo had a view that the night sky is pretty random, which, you know, is something we didn't develop in Western civilization until a couple hundred years ago. So the hats off to the Navajo thinkers who figured out the nature of the night sky. Our view of constellations, organize information as stars. We see them as associated when they're not necessarily. And here the Big Dipper is shown as being really composed of stars that are different distances from Earth and really have no association. So our view of the Big Dipper is the same as this illusion, where misconstruing foreground and background and seeing a relationship that's not really there. But then there's the Pleiades, which look a lot like a small version of the Big Dipper, and they are in fact associated stars moving through space together. So sometimes our pattern recognition is right, sometimes our pattern recognition is wrong. My favorite pattern is not from directly looking at the night sky, but from 1976, the Viking spacecraft took pictures of the surface of Mars, came back with this photo, and people saw a face. And there were sort of two schools of philosophy. One thought it was, an ancient Martian civilization that had erected things that looked like the Sphinx. Others thought it was religious symbolism, Jesus's face put there by God. And it's neither, it's a pile of rocks. And the shadow just seemed to appear to us to a face. Turns out, about the same time as Viking, there was a rock cartoon called The Point, with a soundtrack by Harry Nilsson and narrated by the Beatle Ringo Starr. And there was a character in there called the Rock Man. The Rock Man was like a stoner guru who said wise things. And one of the things he said was, you see what you want to see, and you hear what you want to hear. And that is actually a completely accurate depiction of human perception. We see what we expect to see, and that really colors our perceptions and leads to many misapprehensions. So to review, here are the 10 illusions I've documented. You can disagree with my classification and how I view certain situations, but I think the overall message is we're prone to error in our visual perception. And that has really been something that has been inherent in human beings and has been overcome through the history of astronomy. I want to talk about one other non-illusion, and it's the non-illusion of awe. Awe is a very interesting emotion. We actually, in Dark Sky's website, we have a whole section on awe, which we reprint some material from Sky and Telescope, talk about awe as the astronomer's core emotion. Awe has mixed with it surprise, vastness, transcendence. One neuropsychologist, Paul Purcell, defined it as, quote, an overwhelming and bewildering sense of connection with a startling universe that is usually far beyond the narrow band of our consciousness. So awe is something that takes us away from our immediate environment and through our perception brings us to a different level of awareness. And that leads to artistic and scientific creativity. This is an interesting image because it takes Van Gogh's Starry Night, which is the most famous artwork ever done on the night sky, and it superimposes on it the first photograph from the Webb telescope. So here you have both science and art showing inspiration from the awe of viewing the night sky, which is pretty cool. So where does all this awe come from? Well, I would suggest that the illusions that I've been describing are part of the physiological basis for awe. Awe in part arises when we're a bit confused, surprised, trying to process information that we don't quite understand. And then it motivates us to try to find a path of understanding, whether it's artistic or scientific understanding. Goes back to our friend Timothy Leary. I mean, he was saying when you alter your perception system with LSD, it changes your consciousness. And you can think looking at the night sky as like a little shot of LSD. It's changing your consciousness because your brain doesn't quite know how to process the information it's receiving. But the history of astronomy has been on the scientific path really to overcome all the illusions I've been describing, and through careful thought, instrumentation, creativity, to develop a much more accurate view of the universe. And that's probably one of the major intellectual accomplishments of our species, and it's one we can look at, participate in, be proud of. It's continuing today with the Webb telescope and other scientific endeavors, and it's part of astronomy that should attract us all. So going back to where I started, just sitting, looking at the night sky, we protect what we love. And if you love the night sky, then I ask that you support Dark Sky International and our efforts to overcome light pollution. Thank you.
Well, that was amazing. That makes you think in a different way. I've spent a lot of nights under the stars, way out in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, there's been times I always said it was like diamonds on black velvet. But I have to admit, the idea of laying down on the ground and letting your eyes, I am going to do that when I'm out at Bryce or somewhere where I know there's no creepy critters that are going to be creeping around. I'm going to do that. I have not experienced that. So that's one.
I'm a big fan of zero gravity chairs, I have to say.
Yes. Yeah, something to keep me up off the ground. I never know what's there. Yeah. And when you spoke about awe, I think there is probably nobody that has ever been in astronomy at one time or another, and many more times probably, has not experienced awe. But really say every sense in me really just kind of overloaded was in Alaska. And I know I just everything locked up, but it was in Alaska when I was standing out with like 20 below and I'm at Chena Hot Springs and the aurora went coronal. My mind, honestly, the sky is full of dancing light. Now it's spinning around right over my head, and everything in me is trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. And all I could do was just stand there with my jaw on the ground, like, whoa. I mean, I didn't even begin to know how to process how fast it happened and what I just saw.
That's
And
all.
yeah, it was. And I think things like that, just like the first time you see Saturn through a telescope, a lot of us, that's what hooked us in astronomy. Um, it just overloads your senses for a few minutes, and you really have to stop and think. And that's what your talk has done to me. I want to really try some of these things because you're making me think of it from a different angle. And I really appreciate that because that opens up more of the world.
Good.
So, have you got anything, Scott?
Can't hear.
Yeah, I think you're.
Hold on for a second. There we go.
Yeah.
If you could, Tom, stop sharing your screen, and then we'll be able to switch your.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. It was. I am so happy that you touched on the aspects that you did, because it's most amateur astronomers and all stargazers you know what you're talking about when you talk about this experience of awe, and it is something that according to professors who actually study happiness and the experience of awe, it's something that psychologically people need. I've heard that humans need a major experience of awe at least every week, okay, just to stay sane. And so amateur astronomers are lucky because we are connected to exploring the universe, and we are trying to piece together our place in the universe. And most of us, many of us, know that we are, we agree that we're star stuff, and so I'm really happy in the way that you put together this presentation. It was really great. So thank you.
Before we did this, Terry and I were talking about astrophotography for a while. And it occurs to me, and there's certainly a trend towards astrophotography in the hobby, but what astrophotographers are trying to do is capture awe.
Yes.
Yep.
That's right.
That's for sure.
And astrophotographers want to blow away their viewing audience, right? And so that's what it's all about. Yeah, it's so cool.
And that sense of
Wonderful.
awe is great, but give us a bad night when the one thing doesn't talk to another thing and a telescope and a camera doesn't talk. And awe is the last thing we're feeling at that point. We're all just a little bit
Oh,
we want
yeah.
everything to click together so we can
Yeah, so
enjoy
we
that awe.
can create an awesome
Yeah,
image,
let
right?
it
So
flow.
that's right. That's
We
right.
try.
Yep. Let's see. Audience. Earlier, Matthew Oda, Matt Oda, I've known him for many years. He was talking about John Goss's aspects on volunteerism, and he says there's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer. I guess this is a quote from Lieutenant Colonel James H. Doolittle. So, yeah, and so we had a nice viewing audience today, and I know that for all of you that watch us live, it was great to be able to see it live, but many of you will be tuning in after the fact. And so if you have questions or you want to be part of the Astronomical League, reach out to astroleague.org and either join a club that is a member organization or become a member at large. Tom, thank you so much. And Terry, thank you. I think that's it from our side.
Yep. Well, Tom, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you. We appreciate all of our speakers that come on because they make you stop and think. And that's exactly what they're there for. We learn so much by listening to others' views or how they see things. And it's always such a pleasure to have everybody on. So thank you again, Tom. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and we're all volunteers.
Yes. Yes, we are. We all know, and we all pretty much love what we do because look at all the years we have grown up in these things. I've been in astronomy since I was a teenager, and it's part of me, and I enjoy it. So I volunteer and do what I can because I enjoy meeting the people and that too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's exactly what you do.
Yes.
So
Very
yeah,
good.
we're all on the same plane there.
That's right.
And we know Scott does. He has this broadcast once a month for us and does global star parties. So we really appreciate that because it does connect us all together.
Yes, it
So
does.
Scott, thank you for everything
Thank
you have done
you.
too. We
Yeah.
greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of Global Star Party, our next one is next Tuesday. And so that will be February 11th. And we've got a great lineup already. It is a unique astronomy, a unique history is the theme of it. And we've got some great speakers coming on board. And so, and Tom, you're always welcome to be on Global Star Party. So I'll have to hook up with you later.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, Terry?
Yep. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please join us again on March 7th. We will have Bob King. And thank
Awesome.
you. Everybody
Oh.
have a great weekend.
Yep. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Okay, so we're going to close it down. Again, thanks for watching, and for all of you that are watching, after this episode is recorded, thanks for tuning in, and until the next time we're on Astronomical League Live, you guys keep looking up. Take care.
Although the moon is a relatively primitive body, geologically, its arrested development provides insights into the early evolution of other rocky bodies like Venus, Earth, and Mars. The Lunar Magnetotelluric Sounder is a geophysical instrument designed to probe the moon's deep interior and provide new information on the structure and geological evolution of our companion world. Signals that we're looking at from the solar wind and the Earth's magnetosphere have frequencies that are way below what you might be familiar with as radio waves. These signals take minutes or even hours to complete a single cycle. The benefit of these very low frequency signals is that they penetrate deeply into the moon. This allows us to determine the temperature and composition of the interior of the moon. The magnetic fields are measured by a magnetometer. The electric fields are measured between 4 probes that are deployed at 90-degree angles around the lander. LMS will be among the first geophysical measurements to assess interior properties of the moon since Apollo. LMS is both simpler to operate and has better performance than these Apollo-era experiments. Its demonstration paves the way for an even better version on a later CLIPS mission, as well as opportunities for other worlds, including Mars. Our team at Southwest Research Institute, Heliospace Corporation, and NASA Goddard all contributed to this first extraterrestrial magnetotelluric measurement. Commercial lunar payload services, NASA and American companies working together.